At the top left-hand corner of the menu tree is the banking section. We will double-click the Write Checks and Drafts, and we will be prompted to select which checking account we would like to write these checks from. The drop-down list shows us all checking accounts that were set up in our entity file. Refer to the Add Modify Entity section on how to set up bank accounts. We will click OK and proceed into the check writing module. The check writing module is broken up into 4 sections. The first section to the left is all checks that have been entered into the accounting system. Whether or not these checks have been printed can be determined by looking at the status. Slide the bar to the right, and you can see the status field of all checks as whether they have been printed, not printed, or voided. To open up one of these checks and review it, simply click the check number, and the check information is displayed. You can sort or filter for a check or a company payee. If I want to find a check number without scrolling through hundreds of checks, I can just type in on the filter and drill down to that specific check. I can clear the filter by deleting the characters that I have entered into the filter. The next section is the check header. The check header shows you the check number if it has been printed. The check number is not assigned to the check until you hit the Print button. Let's click the Add button at the bottom and open up Check Header for creating a new check. The first thing that we want to do is to determine whether or not we have to add this entity to the system or pay one that is already on file. If we know that this entity is not on file, we just have to click the Add Modify Entity button, and the entity screen will appear to which we can add the new entity in. To search for an entity, select how you want to find that entity by the Search By criteria. We will change this from Search By Last Name to Search By Company Name. Now, in the search field, just type in part of the name of the company that you want to search, and press the Enter key. When I press the Enter key, all companies that have the number 2000 within their company name are displayed. I have 2 options. You can either select the entity that you want to print the check for by double-clicking the record selector to the left of the entity's name and number, or by typing in the row number of the entity you wish to select and pressing Enter. If the search results only returned one entity, you need not double-click or enter the row number, just click the OK button and the one entity will be selected for your check writing purposes. The Info tab shows the information about the entity. To the bottom right of the Info tab is a little envelope. If you click this envelope, the email editor will pop up, allowing you to enter in any information and attach documents to send directly to that entity. If any of the information on the entity has changed, you need only to click the Add Modify Entity button, and the entity screen will appear, allowing you to make any edits or additions. The check number field is blank until the check has actually been printed. You have the option of checking whether this is a 1099 entity that you will need to print a 1099 report for at the end of the year, or whether this is just an auto draft that is being taken out of the account and electronically sent to the entity. The statuses will automatically be updated as you click the Print Check button, but if you wish to void the check, just change the status to a void. The check type determines the style of grid and the style of the check to be printed. For example, we're on a standard check type. If I were to change this to a stock purchase and hit the Tab key, all of our stock units appear in the secondary grid on this screen. Likewise, on the check type, you can do a floor plan or a floor plan interest check. In all cases, the stock purchase, floor plan, and floor plan interest change the secondary grid to information related to their particular check type. If we know the amount of the check, we just need to type in the check amount. The GL account number was predetermined when we selected the checking account that we're going to write these checks on. The check memo can be entered in by the user at the time the check is being written, or it can pick up a check memo default that was already assigned to this entity. To the right of the check memo shows the current balance that is owed to this entity. In this case, we are writing a standard check. The invoices that we owe this entity for are listed in the secondary grid. At the top of the grid, like with all grids, there is a filter. If I want to filter and drill down on any transactions in this grid, I just need to type that information into the filter itself. The filter shows the company, the profit center that this transaction was generated for, the entity's reference number. The difference between a reference number and an entity reference number is the check number that we write this check would be the dealership's reference number. The entity's reference number is the invoice number that they had stamped on their invoice when they mailed it to you. We are going to pay invoice number 93 and 222 with whatever the next check number is. If you wanted to view the source document for this reference number, click the button with the letter V on it, and if that source document was entered into the system or came from parts or service or your general PO system, that PO or invoice document would automatically appear. You do not need to go out of the check writing system to research other documents that are listed here for payment. The next is the GL account number that this transaction will debit once the check is printed. The due date listed, and the discount date, which states that if this invoice is paid before this date, you can get the calculated discount. You have several ways that you can pay these invoices. The easiest way is if you're going to pay all the invoices is just click the Pay All. And each invoice that is listed in the grid will automatically be posted in the transaction grid at the bottom. Or you can just click the Pay button and that individual invoice will appear in the transaction grid at the bottom. The third way is just to type in the amount that you wish to pay. With each transaction that is either clicked on for payment or entered in, the system will automatically create a debit transaction to the selected account number that was assigned to that transaction when it was created, and will increase the total credit amount that is going to be charged to the bank account that was selected up here at the top of the screen. The transaction grid at the bottom is also available for manual entry. If there is an invoice that is not listed on the screen because it hasn't been posted yet, but you still want to pay that on this check, or possibly you want to expense something off to a different account, you can just type that information in at the bottom by hand. Now you have to make sure that if you do make a manual entry in the bottom grid, you will have to manually adjust the bank account record to make sure that the transaction stays in balance. Notice that as I change the grid at the bottom, it also changed the amount of the check that I'm going to write. This is directly related to the transaction for the bank account number at the bottom grid. Further down on the screen, we can see our totals of our debits and our credits. In this case, they balance because there is a difference of 0. We have some buttons at the bottom. We've already clicked the Add button to create a new check. If I wanted to go through the checks that are on file one at a time, either forward or backwards, I could just click the Previous or Next button. If I want to save this check and come back to it at a later time, I just click the Save. If I wanted to search for specific checks, I could click the Search button and enter criteria. We will discuss this feature in just a few minutes. In the entity information for this bank, we stated that this bank account could not have a check without having multiple approvals on it. In the security system, you set up which users have the right to approve a check. And thus, you can have one person enter all of the checks and another higher up manager come through and click I approve for this check to be printed. You cannot click the print button without having an approval for this check. If you have security rights to click the approval button, the check approval screen will appear. By clicking OK, you can see the button at the bottom of an approval says now approvals 1 of 1. You can have as many approvals on a checking account as you desire. Clicking the print button will assign a check number and print the check. If this check has too many invoices to fit on a check stub, you can click the remittance button, and that will print out a remittance sheet that shows all of the invoices that are being paid, of which you can then insert into the envelope with the check that you're mailing. Auto check writing is a batch feature, which allows you to go through all of your entities that you owe money to and select which ones you would like to pay. We will come back to this in a few minutes. You can assign alerts throughout the systems. The alert button allows you to type in a note and save that alert with this check. Anytime another user opens up this check to review it, that alert screen will pop up to remind them or to notify them of why you wrote that check or if you made any non-standard changes. At this time, we will click the print button, and the computer system will assign the next check number and change the status of the check to printed. Once a check has been printed, the information has been locked down, and only users with the authority can go in and change the status from printed back to not printed and reprint the check. This is a security permission that is only granted to the highest level of those employees. The search button brings up a search screen which allows you to enter in criteria that will filter and display the checks that meet that criteria in the left-hand grid. For example, if I wanted to go back to month 7 of 2010, I click OK, and there are the checks that were printed or entered in month 7 of 2010. By again clicking the check, it displays that information. Clicking the search button and clicking OK with the screen completely empty will bring up every check that was ever written on this account. If I slide the bar to the right, I can change the filter of the status, and I can see all of the voided checks that we ever had. By moving the slide bar, we can see all of the checks that were ever printed and identify them by colors. As you can see, we have the red voided check here, and we have other checks that were cleared manually in the system. There are two ways to clear checks off your check register: manually and the automated updated process that comes from downloading your bank statement from your bank's website. We'll go into clearing checks later in another video. Auto check writing is a feature that allows users to print checks in batches to multiple entities. Since it is very similar to writing checks in an individual basis, we suggest that users become familiar with that method before attempting to write checks through an auto check writing batch. To begin auto check writing, click the auto check writing button at the bottom of the screen. It will then become highlighted in red to alert you that you are in check writing batch mode. To the bottom left is a filter. Enter in a beginning and ending entity range. You can also enter in a GL account number for your accounts payable if you want to pay by GL account number. And then finally, you can enter in a due date, which will only display invoices that are due at that time. Click the Proceed to Check Writing. At the bottom left-hand corner, 5 buttons appear. If desired, the user can print an invoices due. Otherwise, they need only to click on each one of the entities at the top of the screen. As the entity is clicked, the list of all invoices that are due will appear. Like in individual check writing, you can click the Pay All, you can click the Pay on an individual invoice, or you can enter in the amount that you wish to pay. Once you have clicked what you want to pay, hit the Save button and move on to the next entity. If you find that you do not want to pay any invoices for this entity, just skip over them, moving down the list to pay the ones that you wish to pay. Once you have selected all invoices to pay, You can print a report, if desired, that says print all the invoices that are selected. You can also print remittance sheets for those entities that have more invoices than will fit on the check stub. And then finally, you can click the Print Checks button. When the Print Checks button is pressed, the entire batch of checks will print out at one time. To enter in payments that have been received, click on the Receive Pay on Accounts in the Banking section of the menu tree. Click the Add button at the bottom, and using the standard search feature built throughout the system, select how you want to find that entity, either by VIN number, company name, last name, phone number, or entity number. We will use the company name. Type in part of the name and press Enter. Since the entity that we want to use is listed as number 1, we'll just hit the Enter key and move forward. At this time, you can see that the entity has accounts receivable balance of close to $20,000. Enter in a reference number, and if needed, select how the payment was made. You do not need to enter the amount if you're going to select the invoices for which the entity is paying for. Simply click the Pay, and the system will create the accounting entry, creating a debit to the cash in bank undeposited funds and a credit to that entity's account number for that same invoice. Hitting the Save button posts that entry to the accounting system. Another method of receiving checks is by hitting the Multiple Entries. This displays a grid for which you can enter in multiple checks to multiple entities all on one input screen. Enter in a reference number and select the GL account number that this will be posting to for your undeposited funds. It will currently default to your last used GL account number. To the right of the GL account field is a button with 3 dots. Anytime that you see a button with 3 dots, if you click it, it brings up a search screen. In this case here, it is defaulted to bring up the account type of CL for clearing accounts, which is generally the account type for undeposited funds. We will continue to stay with 1212. Next, in the entity number field, enter your entity number, or again, use the search option by typing in the company name and selecting the one that you would like to post the payment to if you do not know the number. Another feature is the View button right next to the Entity Search button. To the right of the Entity Search button is the View button. By clicking the View button, it will immediately bring up that entity's record so that you can review any accounts receivable or accounts payable information. The entity name is displayed, and then you can type in the entity reference number. You can then type in the entity reference number that the entity is paying for and the amount of the payment. If the entity doesn't have a default GL account number on file, enter it now. This should be his accounts receivable number. Enter any comments about this transaction and press Enter and move to the next line, of which now you can enter another entity's payment information. When you're complete, click the Process and Save button, and the system will create an entry in the Cash Receipts Journal for you. To post your warranty credits in the accounting module, click on Warranty Credits underneath the Banking section of the accounting menu tree. Next, click the Add button at the bottom left to open a new entry screen for warranty credits. Enter your reference number, and then tell the system whether you're receiving a cash or check payment or whether you're getting a credit memo for parts that have been purchased through the manufacturer. If you're using it for a cash payment, you would select the warranty receivable company under the section where it says Payment Credit Received, and you would select which clearing account that you want your undeposited funds to go into. The debit amount is a control field. It helps you verify that all of the claims that you have entered in balance back to the amount of the check that was being sent to you. Likewise, the next section over is for accounts payable trade. If you have purchased parts and the manufacturer is going to give you credit on those parts based on warranties that you have submitted, select the warranty company from this screen. Select the accounts payable that you will be debiting as the offset to all of the claims that will be entered in. Again, you can type in the debit amount as a control reference to balance the account out. Again, if needed, you can enter in a debit amount as a control amount. Once you have selected the warranty company at the top of the screen, the claim number field drop-down will be populated with those outstanding claims for that company. Use the mouse to either select the claim or just type the claim number in and hit Tab. Next, select the Warranty Claims Receivable account and tab over to the amount. If the claim amount and the credit amount are equal, just tab through the fields and come to the next line. Type in the next claim number, or again select it off the list. In this case, we'll say that the manufacturer is not going to pay for the full claim. It's a $95 claim of which they're only paying $90 for. If I hit Tab off of that field, I can cycle all the way around to the next line. The next line will have the exact same claim number on the screen. I can either type in a new claim number and just go on, leaving a $5 balance that is outstanding on that claim, or I can tab across and change the GL debit account to a write-off account just by selecting it off the list. And as I get to the claim number again, I just type in the next claim number. When all claims have been entered, at the bottom of the screen, you can see the AP credit amount of $830. Currently, I have a difference of $830 because I never entered in my control amount. I will type in the $830 and hit Enter, and at that point, the screen refreshes and I have a difference of 0. I can mark this warranty credit input as completed, and then I can hit OK and close the screen. To record and post your daily deposits, click on the Daily Deposit option under the Banking section on the menu tree. The bank deposit screen will appear. You can either have it set to auto number or enter your own reference number. We suggest that you enter a date. Below the reference number and the transaction date, you'll see the undeposited funds grid. This grid displays all monies that were collected in the parts, service, and finance department. The reason why the money goes into an undeposited funds is to ensure that the accounting department actually collected the money that the other departments received, and that money actually gets into the bank account. When you look at this screen and you see that 1212 has some undeposited funds of $400, and you actually have that $400 in the accounting department, you can send that $400 over to today's deposit. If there is another transaction that you want to send over, again, just highlight the transaction and send it over to the daily deposit. In this case here, we have a deposit, but we don't have the entire funds for it. If we click the expansion button, we can see some more detail about what makes up the daily deposit balance. First, we have $601 of cash and $82.71 of checks. If we want to see more information on these amounts, we just need to click the expansion icon to the left of the cash out type. In this case here, we have 3 transactions that make up the $601 of cash. Clicking the expansion icon to the left of the check, we can see that there's one check for $82.71. By clicking the View button, the system will open up the actual parts or service ticket that money was taken in on. You can then view the cash out totals and see exactly how the money was applied. If you're satisfied with what you see and you have the check in hand, you can send the check over to the daily deposit. In this case, we had the check, but we don't have the cash. So we will leave the cash outstanding until we collect that from the parts and service departments. When we have validated that the information on our daily deposit is correct and that we have a total deposit here of $447.57, we can hit the button called Deposit. This creates the accounting entry which puts the money from our undeposited funds directly into our cash in bank. All we have to do at this point is hit Save, and the screen closes and our deposit is done. To reconcile or balance your bank account to your financial institution's statement, Click the Reconcile Bank Accounts feature located under the Banking section of the menu tree. The check register screen will appear, and to the left you'll see all of your checking accounts. If you have more than one, just click on the checking account that you wish to balance, and its transactions, including all checks and deposits that were entered into the system, will be listed in the grid in the middle of the screen. The first thing you will need to do is to enter in the amount of the bank statement. The amount displayed on the bank statement is the amount that they feel is the amount that you actually have in your checking account. But the bank is unaware of other checks and deposits that you have that have been recorded on the system but have yet to hit the bank. These are called outstanding checks. The computer lists the total of outstanding checks and deposits. Each time that you check off a check or a deposit amount, the computer will put in a cleared date to the right. It will then calculate those checks back into the balance and will determine whether or not your current balance plus the outstanding checks that you have listed on the screen add up and balance back to the bank statement. If you need to drill down or search for any transaction, you can use the standard grid filtering bar. Just type in a check number or deposit number. Back it out. You can click on the column headings to sort in ascending or descending order, and likewise with the amounts. If you have too many checks to individually go through and check off as being cleared, you can use the flag checks feature. In this case, you can enter the beginning check number and the ending check number and click OK, and all checks within that range will be flagged as cleared. The most convenient way to balance your checkbook is to click the Import Bank Statement. By clicking this, it will read a file that has been downloaded from your bank's website. You will need to log into your bank's website, click on the Download feature, and click to download in the Microsoft Money format. When that file is then placed onto your hard drive and you hit Import, you will then direct the import to read that file. It will automatically check all checks and deposits that have cleared the bank on the screen for you. With the Systems 2000 check register, you don't have to wait to the end of the month to balance your checkbook. It can actually be done on a daily basis. For example, if you pull up your bank account on financial institution's website and you can see the items that have cleared the bank, you can clear them manually by hand or again download on a daily basis and import the bank statement. Once you have your bank statement in balance to zero, you can hit the Save button and then exit.